This is Ephesians 5, 1 through 20. Therefore be imitators of God as beloved children, and walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. But sexual immorality and all impurity or covetousness must not even be named among you, as is proper among saints. Let there be no filthiness, nor foolish talk, nor crude joking, which are out of place, but instead let there be thanksgiving. For you may be sure of this, that everyone who is sexually immoral or impure, or who is covetous, that is, an idolater, has no inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and God. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these things the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. Therefore, do not become partners with them. For at one time you were darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light, for the fruit of light is found in all that is good and right and true. And try to discern what is pleasing to the Lord. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. For it is shameful even to speak of the things that they do in the secret. But when anything is exposed by the light, it becomes visible. For anything that becomes visible is light. Therefore it says, Awake, O sleeper, and arise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil. Therefore do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. And do not get drunk with wine, for that is debauchery, but be filled with the Spirit, addressing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody to the Lord with your heart, giving thanks always and everything to God. Thanks always and for everything to God the Father in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ.
Good.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, guys. Yeah, it's so special. Yeah, Sam's a good friend, and got to meet her at Vanguard. And then it's fun too. I actually roomed freshman year with Sarah at Vanguard, so one of the first people I got to meet. And now we're both teaching middle school, so they're lucky to have Sarah. But yeah, just again, thank you. Thank you guys so much. I feel so grateful. This is such a special community. Was just praying for a place to be able to land in after graduating from college. And this has been an answer to prayer above and beyond what I could have even ever dreamed of. So it's so special to be here. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful again just to be able to share what the Lord's put on my heart. And it's been really cool what we've been able to do, go through the book of Ephesians and hear from different people like Caleb, Meryl, Sam, and so I really do just feel even so equipped by my friends that have gone ahead of me. I really just, even preparing for this, felt like I got to almost stand upon the work that my friends had done for me. And not just up here as I stand in front of you, but in the day-to-day, get to live upon the way that the Lord's been equipping my friends, and just feel so grateful to be able to do that tonight with you guys too. So I love how Meryl ended last week just speaking of her desperate need to be in the presence of the Lord and have her belovedness spoken over her. She was speaking of just the day of her speaking at Genesis, just feeling the need to be down on her knees. Chris always says lie prostrate, which is kind of funny, but she just speaking of the need to be on her knees and before the Lord and have that spoken over her, that truth of her belovedness, that you're a child of God. And it's so cool that that's where we get to start tonight. But just want to be honest and first come in and say, I come with just as many insecurities and lies as well. So, and mine say, Haylee, you don't have much to say, or Haylee, you'd probably be better at this. So just want to be honest and feel encouraged to be honest through my friends and the community around me that have come and shared before. And again, just feel so much more equipped to fight against those things in preparation. So just feel aware of the power of community, and thank you again. So again, I just think it's so fitting that Meryl ended last week where we'll begin this week. Chapter 5, verse 1, like Sarah read, says, Therefore be imitators of God as beloved children, and walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. As I was looking up the Message version, it said, mostly what God does is love you. Mostly what God does is love you. And the picture I get from that, just through thinking through what Meryl shared of just like needing to be down on her knees, the picture that I get of Jesus calling me his beloved and just speaking that over me, it's just a hand that comes down and just like straight to the face, just like big palm straight to the face. And just like when that happens, it's like you can't do anything about it. You just have to receive like what he's speaking over you. You just gotta let it happen and just receive what he has for you. And so we have been empowered to live a life that is so far beyond what these lies and what this world has to offer us. And we've been empowered by grace. And so that's kind of the message that we see Paul kind of getting at here. For my 17th birthday, so 7 years ago, my older sister gave me this Bible. And the first verse that she had underlined in it was Ephesians 2:10. And that says, "For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them." He's done this for us already. He's given himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. God really does desire for us to live in all that he has for us. And all that he has for us is not all that the world offers us, as you guys may be aware of already. But just reading through this passage, I was just thinking through, like, what have the options or what have the choices I've been presented with of choosing, maybe like not this way of the Lord, but what has the world offered me? What have the choices been that I feel like I've been faced with? And so growing up, just thinking about it, I think that I was faced with and am still faced with now what the world offers us. So we have this one choice of like low morality and seduction, of like instant gratification, of like choose what you want and it will be better than what you've been given, and like this message of like don't wait. So I felt aware of that choice. Or I felt aware of like this other choice of like perfectionism or legalism that says like there's high morality and like you don't need grace. You're almost like above grace or you're perfect. If you do mess up, then there's something wrong with you and that's not okay. And there's like a life of shame pretty much that you're living in. And so from a young age, I think I was pretty aware of these options. And so it brought me back to maybe one of my first memories of like what else is there? And so I was thinking through when I was younger, maybe like 6 or 7, but my younger sister and I used to share a room, and we had bunk beds. And most nights before we went to sleep, my mom would read us a story. And this night, for some reason, she was reading us the story of Job. So it's kind of it's a good choice, Mom. But the story of Job, it really stuck with me. It's one of my favorite stories. And this is less from the memory of that night and more through just looking through the story again. But if you don't know, Job is a man who deeply loves the Lord, and he ends up having everything taken away from him. Pretty much in summary. He's stripped down to nothing, and then in the whole book, there's just like 40-plus chapters of Job asking the Lord, like, what's going on? And his friend saying, like, just give up. And Job saying, I kind of want to, or like, maybe I shouldn't. And then ends with just great suffering, and not ends with, but Job just goes through a great deal of suffering. At the end of these chapters, the Lord pretty much comes, and Job answers him like this. I know you can do all things, and no one can upset your plans. And I remember sitting there, I remember this part in my memory as a child, and just sitting there and being like, Mom, what? That is not how I thought it was going to turn out. Like, why is he saying that? I know you can do all things, and no one else can upset your plans. After everything being stripped away from him, and he has nothing. I remember at that young of age thinking that does not make sense. Like that's crazy. And so just sitting in awe as a little kid, because for some reason, like I knew he should not be responding like that. And so I asked my mom, like, why did he do that? Like, what does he have to be able to do that? And I remember her saying something like, it's because he has the Lord in him, and he has something greater than all the things that were taken away from him. And I said, like, then I want that. I was hungry for it. I wanted something more than what those two options offered to me gave me. And so in that moment, maybe that was my first recognition of there's another way. There's something else that's being offered to us here. And so God so desires for us to live in the fullness of what he has for us. And so in these next few verses, Paul goes on to talk to the church just about sexual immorality or impurity or covetousness, filthiness, foolishness, crude joking, just impurity. And he's saying, like, if you are living this way, then you're not living in the kingdom of God now. Like, you're not experiencing the fullness of what the Lord has for you now. And so again, we're faced with these opportunities of a life that says, I know what's best for me, I'll do whatever I want because it's what feels good to my body. And friends, honestly, when we're living a life that says, I'll do whatever I feel like doing because I have freedom to do so, we're not actually living in freedom. That's a lie. It's a lie when we say we're free to do whatever we want, but instead you're enslaved to anything that your body feels like doing. It's not true freedom, and that's not what the Lord has for us. And also, if you're living a life of high morality and you're saying, I'm good because I don't do this, you're living a life above grace. That's not all that the Lord has for us either. And I'm not up here saying I don't struggle with that. Like, that's hard. We live in a world where that's hard, and we're constantly bombarded by those decisions. So God's really concerned with how we're living now. There is a kingdom to be found here on earth, and when we're not really fully living in it, we're just missing out on what he has for us. Something I was thinking about when going through this was, like, what it can be compared to this was, like, imagine making a meal with someone. So, like, I'm making dinner with Tyler, and we are, like, I'm washing the vegetables, Tyler's cutting them, like, we're getting all of our seasonings together, and like, something I do is, like, I go to the stove and turn up the heat, Tyler goes to the stove and turns down the heat. Like, it's like this whole process, and you're bumping into each other, and it's beautiful. Like, you're taking things that aren't together and putting them together to, like, have this process of making something that hopefully fills you and is good. And so this picture of, like, us finally getting to the point where we can set our food on the plates, and then me just saying, okay, see you, Tyler. Like, I didn't get to enjoy, like, the fulfillment of sitting down with him and, like, eating a meal and enjoying, like, the hard work that we put into it. It's kind of like that where, like, you do some of it, but you're not experiencing the fullness of what it can bring to you. Like, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I think that this is what I imagine it to look like when we're not fully entering into what the Lord has given us. And again, he just has so much more for us. Yeah. And so we need help. Like, we need people to help remind us that these options are not the only options that we have, that there is another way that the Lord has opened up for us, again, like, through his grace. We're empowered by his grace, not by our own works, but a way that he's offered up to us by his sacrifice and by his grace. And this way, this third way or fourth way or fifth way is the way of love and the way of grace. In college, I took a class on human trafficking, and I remember studying through just, like, the mindset of these different perpetrators of human trafficking or victims of human trafficking. And one of the questions in our research that we were looking through was, like, why do these victims, like, stay in these kind of situations? And then in our study, like, we wanted to know, like, how how can we best help these people like get out of this lifestyle? What is a helpful method for helping these people like get out of this life? And so often we found that these victims, this was their only way that they could live. When you're put into such a hopeless situation and isolated from everything else, you really don't have any other options. And so you're not doing this because it's even like it makes sense. It's just your only option to survive. And so the thought of getting help or even living a different way of life is like no longer even possible. And so in our research, there are obviously a number of different situations that could be helpful to help these victims out. But one of the things that is the most helpful to like offer a safe place to these people to help them get out of this life is to remind them that they have other options. It's so important for them to see that there's another way to live and that could be so much better. And again, these are real life circumstances that do happen very close in our city. And so I don't want to make light of what the reality of that kind of circumstance actually is, but we so often live like that. We so often live like we haven't been given any other options. And that's actually what Jesus did for us. He came into our hopeless situation and said, like, no, like, don't worry. I have another way for you. This is not the only option that you have. And that's what he's offering us here. Another way to live, the way of love and the way of grace. This way says, you were made for so much more. You are loved, you are wanted. I'm after your heart, and I'm after a relationship with you. I want you to know me and have all that I have for you. And even in verse 8 it says, For at one time you were darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. So walk as children of light. One of the stories that I've resonated with just in the Bible has been the story of the bleeding woman. And I've just loved this story of faith, bold faith, of this woman that has struggled with this physical ailment for 12 years. She's been defiled. She's been outcast. She isn't even named. She's called the bleeding woman. This woman has just lived a rough life, and so she has the bold faith to believe that Jesus can bring her physical healing. And so she goes through this crowd of people, touches all of these people, which would have deemed them unclean, like something that was definitely looked down upon. And she trusts that just in touching the cloak of Jesus' robe, that she's going to be brought physical healing. And then it turns out that the Lord not only is after her physical healing, but he's also after her heart. He's after the emotional, spiritual, social healing, so much more than she could have even imagined. And he turns around and says, daughter. He gives her a name. He recognizes her in front of other people, a crowd of people, and says, you're welcome here. You're welcome into this family. And I just think that's such a beautiful picture of the Lord having so much more for us than we could ever even imagine. That sometimes we're just after, and have good faith to be so pursuing the Lord in one aspect of our life, but that he so desires to fill us in a way that's far beyond we could ever imagine. And so, again, just want to acknowledge that that's hard. It's hard to see. I imagine that we want to step into that. I imagine that we want to fully step into that, but sometimes it's hard because it feels like everything can be pulling us back or pulling us into these other options or choices that are so in front of our faces sometimes. And so just want to remind us that that's why we have each other. That's why we have friends to help us, and that's why we are in community to help speak this love and this truth and this way of grace over each other and really help each other remember that there really is another way.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, before she sits down, this was Haley's first time teaching. I mean, she did a small teaching. I didn't even know she was that good. Press Juicery had a size 3, I would get it for.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's so good. I'm a little sweaty. Can you get this? Yeah. Okay. So I'm just gonna finish out this kind of first, not half, but pericope of Ephesians 5, and yeah. I just want to start with a little social experiment. This is not a dig. That is not a bash at all. Is there anyone else here that can just relate with me that at times in our lives it has maybe felt like the Bible was here to take life away or put boundary on our life rather than give it? Like, honestly, has anyone ever felt that? It's not a dig against the Bible. Yeah, like it is an honest process that we often go through as followers of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And so I grew up in southern Indiana, right on the north border of Kentucky. So I lived in like the northern tip of the Bible Belt, if anyone knows what that is. So basically what it means is like we got free curbside preaching about where we were going to spend eternity. Yeah, it was awesome. And then we also got like 10% discounts at restaurants on Sundays after church if we like gave our church bulletin, right? So it's like everything was very culturally Christian, and it's good. I love that people know and love Jesus there. But I grew up in honestly a very binary way of knowing Jesus, of following Jesus, and of thinking about Scripture. So my understanding is that every answer you need in life, everything, it's cut and paste, dry, it is black and white, there's zero gray, like period, And so I grew up with this very binary way of it's one way or the other only. I remember scriptures when I was like 14 years old going through puberty and honestly just being like, if you even look at a woman lustfully, you've committed adultery. And I'm like, oh my gosh, God, give me a break. Like, I swear I have a good heart. I got like adultery on the checklist, Or I legitimately remember like a surgeon coming into our high school one time, and he was a hand surgeon, and he showed us this picture of a hand. And like it was the wrist, and then about 4 inches of space, and then the hand, because this girl had cut her right hand off. And why? Because if your right hand even causes you to stumble, cut it off. Right? So that's the culture I grew up in. Very binary. It's this way or that way. We take everything literally rather than literately. I remember I kind of like coined this phrase for our culture at large. I call it conditionally legalistic, right? So like it's legalistic, but I remember finding out that my pastor drank bourbon, and the person who told me is like, you didn't hear it from me. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like the unspoken rule was just like drinking's bad, right? And we don't see that anywhere, but that's what it is. And I don't attribute this necessarily just to the leadership. That was very much the culture I grew up in, just being a part of a very, I don't know another way to put it besides just very legalistic culture. And so that's kind of what our leadership had to deal with. So things went very unspoken. And honestly, I just became like super angry at it. It was really easy when I was just starting to follow Jesus and I didn't know a lick about the Bible. I didn't know a lick about what Paul or Jesus were really trying to say. But I remember going to college and just learning to process and study and meditate on Scripture. And I was just like, all right, something else is up here. Like God is on to something else rather than just taking life away from us, right? I feel like these past few years of my life have been specifically, I feel that there's a calling on my life to walk people into freedom. And I don't know exactly, I haven't quite sussed it out exactly what that means, but it feels very deeply ingrained in me. And so as I've just kind of been stepping in this, it's interesting because the last couple of months, like honestly, I've just had to step into a posture of recognizing like I haven't received complete freedom for myself. Like it's been given to me, but I haven't taken it on and stepped into it. And so honestly, when I found this out, like the best metaphor I have for it is like finding out Michael Phelps drowned swimming laps. Like that's not possible, like one of the world's best swimmer drowning swimming laps in a pool. No, like my gift is leading people into freedom, and I haven't stepped into freedom for myself. It's crazy, but it's like, how do you when you're constantly walking the legalistic tightrope of Christianity? Like, has anyone else ever struggled with that? And so my whole life, my entire life, my value, my peace within, my goodness, the image of God in me was kind of settled on or based on these binaries. So I have my first slide, if you want to put that up there, is kind of put on these binaries that you're either a good friend or a bad friend. And like relationship to me is everything. So if I was a bad friend, that's the end of, that's terrible. You're either a good Christian or a bad Christian. You're either right or wrong. There is no gray. You're either in or out. And then my favorite highway billboard, heaven or hell, you choose. Like, what does that do to a kid's psyche, right? Like, it scares you into following Jesus, honestly. And then I recognize that there's some in our culture that we need to loosen the grip of to really walk into freedom. So you either have a problem with drinking or you have a drinking problem. You either have a high-paying job in Orange County or you are less valuable. You either remain unhappy or you get divorced. You're either gay or a Christian. You're either white or underprivileged. I recognize that these are very real things that people in this room walk through. And I had no clue, like Haylee was talking about, that there was a third way. It's not just legalism and this, and it's not just freedom with no parameters around it. But when you're living under legalism, what you do defines how good you are, right? And it's easy to figure out how good you are because if it's based off the rules, then we're good to go. But when you live in grace, and this is really what I kind of just want to get into tonight, when you live in grace, what's already been done for you defines how good you are. Like who you are right now is inherently good. You're no longer sinners, but you are saints. And so we're at the party. We're living in the kingdom of God right here, right now. We kind of have the theological term of the now and not yet, that it's not just all about getting to heaven one day. And so I think Paul and Jesus were really onto something when they're in their ministry, that what you do in your day-to-day life actually really matters. And it's twofold. Yes, we want to spend eternity with Jesus in heaven. Absolutely. But it's also that we need to be awakened that right now we have the ability to live in kingdom come. Jesus says to the Pharisees, you are missing out on the kingdom. It's right here and you're missing. But what you do really matters. So in these final verses, basically what Paul's doing, I'm just going to take 10 minutes and just walk us through kind of 3 points in it. But what Paul's doing is just setting up parameters so that we can live free, so that we don't have to live bound to the conscience. He was talking to a Jewish culture who was bound to 613 laws. He is setting up parameters so that we don't have to funnel everything through that, but so that we can live fully free. So another slide, Josh. This is basically kind of 3 what I almost considered as binaries at the end of this passage. He says, live not as unwise, but as wise. And then I love how he follows that, making the most of every opportunity. Don't be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. And then don't get drunk on wine. Instead, be filled with the Spirit. So verse 15, live not as unwise, but as wise. We could talk all day around what wisdom in the Bible is. And for sure, we see areas where we understand the beginning of wisdom, that it's knowledge, that it's a longing for God. But I love the way Chris Venant describes wisdom often. That it's the ability to make the right choice based on the outcome. Wisdom is the ability to make the right choice based on the outcome. So we're going to get super practical here. I should not eat cheese. It's a real deal. If anyone's been there, done that, you know why, right? So I open up my refrigerator. There's a nice block of cheddar cheese there. I know that if I eat it, it might make Haylee second guess sleeping in the same bed as me at night, right? Should I eat the cheese? Probably not. Very practical, right? A little higher level. I know that checking out a girl walking down the road is unhelpful to me, to our relationship. I'm not honoring Haylee. I'm not honoring myself. I'm not present to either one of us. Should I check out that girl walking down the road? The wise answer based on the outcome is no, I shouldn't. It's not meant to just be legalistic. But I love the way that Paul actually follows this up, making the most of every moment. This is very reminiscent of one of my favorite passages or moments in the Old Testament where, oh, that fell. Thank you. Paul would have known Torah well. So back to Exodus 31, if you can give me that slide, Josh. Exodus 31. This is the moment of Bezalel. When the Lord said to Moses, "See, I have chosen Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, and I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with wisdom, with understanding, the knowledge, with all kinds of skill, to make artistic designs for work in gold, silver, and bronze, to cut and set stones, to work in wood, and to engage in all kinds of crafts." Bezalel was chosen for his wisdom, and what does wisdom look like in this case? They're working on the Ark of the Covenant here, and he was given these raw materials to go and make something beautiful and good with it, right? Like there's no science or formula for wisdom. In the Bible, it's basically not how smart you are, but how well you do something is how we often see wisdom played out. It's being given raw material and making something beautiful out of it. It's about being given a moment and making the most of every opportunity in that moment, right? I think it's beautiful. There's freedom in that. Verse 17, don't be foolish, but understand the Lord's will. This one was big for me. My junior year of high school, college, I was just in a really rough place. Like, honestly, I would say if I wasn't too afraid, I would have said I don't believe in God. Like, that's kind of to where I was walking through at the time. And I remember just sitting on my butt watching Netflix every night. And my friends would just like, "What are you up to? What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'm just kind of waiting for God to make his will clear for what I should do next. Like, I'm just kind of waiting to see what God wants me to do." It's like, okay, for sure. But like, get off your butt. Like, go do something. Don't just watch Netflix all night, right? Like, what is God's will? That's such a mystical question in our life often. Is it this random spot on a map that we hopefully just have to stumble on and find? I don't think that's the case, right? Like, I do see a very sovereign will of God throughout Scripture that from Genesis 3, he is committed to his people to reconcile all of the cosmos back to him. That is absolutely the sovereign will of God. But I think one of the best pictures of what it looks like in our lives is Romans 12. His good, his pleasing, and his perfect will. That's not a science by any means. It doesn't say if you do this, this, and this, then you're in the will of God. But it's that which is good and pleasing to God. I mean, I imagine this is kind of parenting 101, but growing up, I was kind of scattered. I loved basketball, I loved skateboarding, I loved wakeboarding, whatever, music, And I don't think my mom or stepdad was over there like, "My will for you is to play piano, but if you don't, and I'm not going to tell you specifically that you should, then like, you've missed," right? Like, no, I was doing things that I was gifted at and loved, and they loved seeing their son run free and do things that he was gifted in. Some of you in here want to clothe the homeless. Some want to transform the marketplace to shrink the ever-growing gap between the rich and the poor. Some people in here want to care for the environment and the earth that God gave us. Like, those are all good and pleasing things to God. I think we just need to run after those things, right? I think that it's pretty clear to me that wisdom is actually kind of the basis for understanding what God's will is. If we can learn to make the best decision based on what the outcome will be, then I think we're at least heading in a pretty good direction towards God's will, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so practical. So why does it matter? Why did Paul think it was important to put this? It matters because if the whole point isn't just to get to heaven one day, then it actually matters the condition that you and I leave this world in when we leave. It matters that we teach our kids to make good decisions. It matters that we leave our workplace and bring people in to carry a vision of spreading Jesus through the workplace. It matters that we don't just blow ourselves up with chemicals around here, right? It all matters. And then verse 18, I think this is like my favorite part. Don't get drunk on wine, instead be filled with the Spirit. Now, I personally don't think that sounds like exact opposite binaries to me. And I'll tell you why. Not because I think we should go around getting drunk. I think that you cannot be drunk and clearly not be living a life that is being lived out of the overflow of the Spirit, right? Like, we've all had those moments in our life. But I want to put this into perspective for you a little bit, okay? So if we had one glass of wine per night, or day, whatever, for 365 days straight, one glass of wine for a year every single day, we'd be drinking 14 and a quarter gallons of wine, okay? That's a lot. In the Roman culture, wine was actually not even considered a luxury. It was considered a necessity, right? So I know some of you in here are like, they had to figure it out. They were right? It was actually considered a necessity because clean water was not easy to come by and you could ferment grapes well. So the average Roman citizen's ration of wine was 100 gallons a year. They would drink 100 gallons of wine a year. A slave's ration of wine was 50 gallons of wine a year, okay? So to put that in perspective, that would mean we would have to drink 7 glasses of wine a day to be drinking as much as they were drinking. Like, that is a lot. Maybe not to you guys, I don't know. 7? That's the perfect number. But Paul knew who he was talking to. Like, he wasn't just talking to an average Orange County wine drinker, right? And he's actually, this is beautiful. We need to remember this. He's addressing the community here, right? He's not saying like, hey, so-and-so, you've got a drinking problem, cut it out. No, he's saying like, your all's drinking problem is unhelpful. It's leading you to make bad decisions for yourselves and for the community, and you're all weaker because of it. But he's equally saying that this community needs to be a place of walking with one another and of caring for one another and praising with one another, as we'll see in these next verses. Like, it is a collective call for all of us to live out of the fullness of the Spirit, like Haylee was talking about. So when one of us doesn't, we are weaker because of it. But we equally get the chance to step in and care for one another and cover each other when, as humans, we don't do the hottest at that, right? Yeah. And so he ends magnificently. It is so beautiful. And I'm going to read the Message translation because it's just on fire. Sing hymns instead of drinking songs. Sing songs from your heart to Christ. Sing praises over everything, any excuse for a song to God the Father in the name of Jesus Christ. Seems like what Paul's saying here is that the sign of you living in complete freedom, kind of the third way, not the super legalistic and not the I'm so perfect or I have to, live so free or whatever. But the sign of that is worship. Is what you're doing in your day-to-day life, is the result worship? Is the result of making the most of every opportunity worship? And so we did 24 hours of prayer this week, partially as a posture of putting ourselves in that place of worship. And Caleb and I got to pray together for an hour, and it was also on fire. And I don't usually like alliteration. I don't know, but I'm going to just bring you some alliteration here, okay? The AAA. But we just kind of got this alliteration that just developed throughout the day. But Dana taught a couple weeks back about Paul teaching on awakening to Jesus. The sense that you got during that was that you were completely in your deepest state of sleep, and then in a second, you were awake and like ready to run a marathon. And so we kind of got this alliteration of an awakening to Jesus that leads to an adoration of him, that leads to an authority of Jesus in our life, right? Like, we can have a moment of awakening to Jesus, but if we're not spending moments of worship and adoration, then his authority just dissipates in our life. And I can tell you that, like, I've gotten in this weird habit lately of just studying weird theological debates. And the result is typically not worship. It's typically like, oh my gosh, who is God? What am I doing? What am I supposed to do with the rest of my life, right? So is how we spend our day-to-day our moments, every single moment, leading us to a place of worship. And so right now, we're going to practice that together. And I'm going to land in worship. And actually, Haylee and I are going to lead this, because we want to really be practicing what we're preaching to you guys, and it's important in this. But also, this is a moment for us to examine ourselves. We can feel as off as we want. It can be as hard of a day as it is. But like the fact of the matter is, everything should lead us to the heart of Jesus. Yeah. And so right now, let's just stand together. And you know what we're going to do? Let's move the chairs. It is not convenient by any means, but we're just going to do it.